This is the artificial intelligence voice of Patrick Bet-David narrating this pod-slice summary of the PBD podcast. In this PBD podcast, host Patrick Bet-David and the guest, Roger Stone, engage in a conversation regarding the recent events at OpenAI, a major artificial intelligence company. The discussion centers around the dramatic exit of OpenAI's co-founder, Sam Altman, eliciting a threat of mass resignation from the organization's 700 employees out of 770, hinting at a possible move to Microsoft. The hosts dive into the sequence of events, pointing out how this corporate drama occurred without Microsoft knowing until the last moment. David and Stone bring to light the complexities and recent transformations at OpenAI, including its transition from a nonprofit into a for-profit entity in 2019 and the huge investments it attracted from tech giants like Microsoft and visionary entrepreneurs like Elon Musk. A key point in their debate is Altman's position as the leader of a firm valued at $86 billion, yet owning no equity in it, which raises questions about the logic of such a strategy in the hosts' minds. They also consider the possibility of Microsoft seeing more value investing $13 billion in OpenAI than merely acquiring it for its valuation of $86 billion. Another participant in the conversation, provides a detailed account of the fast-paced dynamic among the board at OpenAI, Altman, and Microsoft's CEO. Satya Nadella shedding light on the Silicon Valley tactic of acqui-hire, where a company acquires another to get its talented workforce rather than its product or services. Furthermore, they ponder upon potential futuristic implications of AI in human life and affiliations, stressing how, despite the advancements in AI, business running still revolves significantly around human relationships and interactions. As Bet-David puts it, even with the growth of AI and artificial general intelligence, businesses still need humans to operate them effectively, as demonstrated by Sam Altman's influence at OpenAI. Continuing with the discussion on OpenAI and artificial general intelligence AGI, the conversation pivots towards the role of human values and humanism in the development of AI. Altman, in correspondence with his employees, emphasized the necessity for a super-alignment team generated with 20 of the company's computing power to uphold the safety of humans. His concern was underscored by a harrowing comparison where he stated that AGI could treat humans as humans treat animals, an indication of humans potentially becoming second in command in the hierarchy. The dialogue on AG progresses with a note on current events. An executive order was recently signed by President Biden, invoking the Defense Production Act. This act brings into focus issues like privacy, national security, deepfakes, and other significant considerations concerning AI. Amidst these developments, the hosts point out the shared sentiment that the welfare of humanity must always be at the forefront of AI advancement. To bring things into perspective with a hands-on example, Roger Stone shares his experience with deepfakes in the political domain. Deepfakes have evolved to an extent where they can flawlessly manipulate videos, making it appear as if an opponent or those one opposes say or do things they never have. The potential misuse of this technology in swaying public opinion, as Stone experienced, underlines the serious implications of unchecked AI developments. The hosts discussed the value of OpenAI as not just a $1 trillion idea, but potentially a $10 trillion concept. They discussed the implications of Microsoft potentially becoming the first $10 trillion company globally if the OpenAI workforce decides to move there. This scenario demonstrates the power dynamics at play in the business world and how human resources still contribute significantly to a company's worth and future potentials. Further elucidating the board dynamics within an organization, Stone explains the importance of maintaining a diverse and large board. As the board size reduces, the chances of oversights and decreased diversity of thought rise. The discussion brings forth how the decrease in the number of board members from 9 to 6 presumably played a part in the recent events at OpenAI. The hosts highlight how critical board members are for a balanced company structure and how the decision to remove Sam Altman, possibly due to the board size reduction, has led to considerable upheaval within the organization amidst the internal unrest at OpenAI. The hosts mention outside interest in the company's workforce, with Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff ready to match any OpenAI researcher who has tendered their resignation with full cash and equity offers to join Salesforce's AI research team. While discussing the firing of CEO and co-founder Sam Altman, the host revisits several instances where high-profile founders like Steve Jobs and James O'Keefe have been ousted from their companies, their impact on the company's trajectory, and the effects on the company as a result. The hosts point out how the timing of removing a founder from a company can significantly alter its future, emphasizing the risk associated with detaching a leader heavily identified with an organization's ethos. The hosts attribute OpenAI's current scenario to Sam Altman's significant influence within the organization, reflected in the employees' response to his removal. The segment ends with an insight into Sam Altman's extensive portfolio and myriad endeavors, including UI Combinator and AI chip design initiatives, that may have led to the board's concerns about his ability to focus on OpenAI. Despite these concerns, the hosts affirm Sam Altman's ability as a relentless founder who, with his wide-ranging technical skills and dedication, contributed significantly to increasing OpenAI's valuation. Delving into the fresh and dynamic political atmosphere in Argentina, the hosts discussed the election of Jair Milei, a figure they liken to an Argentine Elvis Presley for his unabashedly bold and entertaining style. While Milei's unconventional ways, they note, have been instrumental in his captivating the Argentine public amidst severe socioeconomic troubles in the country. A staunch libertarian, Milei is portrayed as a unique character in the political domain who brings forth a radical agenda to combat triple-digit inflation and rising poverty levels in Argentina. Milei's gripping presence is complemented by his depth of knowledge on free market advocates such as Vanon Mises and Hayek. The hosts also highlight Milei's effective use of symbolism in his campaign, where he would show up at his press conferences in superhero costumes or wield a chainsaw. This theatricality served to underscore his commitment to bringing substantial change to the nation. The hosts present Milei's election as a groundbreaking event, as his victory marks the first time a candidate from neither of the two dominant Argentine political parties has won an election. This is a strong indicator of the dissatisfaction and disillusionment with the current political structure and its failure to address pressing national issues. The conversation extends to the broader implications of Milei's victory in the context of worldwide politics, with Roger Stone drawing parallels between Milei's appeal and Trump's appeal in 2016. And the hosts view popular support for figures like Milei and Trump reflects a growing global dissatisfaction with big government and a shift towards more liberty-oriented platforms. The conversation also points out that Argentina, once a rich country, experienced an economic nosedive due to socialist policies. Hence, Milei's win could be seen as a public outcry against failed socialist measures and an urgent call for economic reform and revival. Interestingly, the discussion moves to America, drawing attention to the declining approval rates of President Joe Biden. As per recent NBC polls, President Biden's approval rating reportedly reached a new low at 40, with strong disapproval resonating for his foreign policy and handling of the Israel-Hamas issue. This drop in approval ratings and a rising popularity for Trump among younger voters suggest a possible shift in American political dynamics, similar to what Argentina witnessed with Milei's victory. In conclusion, the hosts speculate on the potential global impact of libertarian politics and the rise of figures like Milei, who combine charismatic appeal with firm principles advocating liberty and economic reform. On a broader scale, this might serve as a precursor to changing political landscapes globally, opening up new conversations on governance, liberty, and economic policies. In this portion of the PBD podcast featuring host Patrick Bet-David and guest, political consultant Roger Stone, the focus dramatically shifts towards American politics, specifically examining the dwindling approval ratings of President Joe Biden. Interestingly, they discuss several polls that highlight Biden's diminishing approval rates, pointing out that even media outlets traditionally friendly to him are acknowledging a downward trend. Stone argues that this response is not shocking. Rather, it's an expected trend, implying that professional Democrats realize that Biden might not be suitable for another campaign. The predicament of the Democratic Party surfaces when Stone suggests Biden's departure could create a void difficult to fill. The hosts echo a consensus that no one can replace the woman vice president of color, Kamala Harris, with a white male. The argument lies within the modern dynamics of the Democratic Party, where bypassing Harris wouldn't be justifiable given their professed focus on diversity and representation. Turning to prediction, they float the idea that Michelle Obama could be a prospective Democratic nominee. Another thought-provoking idea that emerges is that Biden might not consider running for a second term due to health reasons. His declining mental and physical health has been the subject of media scrutiny and public debate, which Stone proposes as a plausible reason for him not to compete in the next election. Turning to the wider Democratic constituents, they highlight the growing disillusionment and frustrations among prominent supporters, illustrated by social media clips revealing the disenchantment of entertainers like Cardi B. This turn among vocal Biden endorsers, they argue, gives credence to the notion that The presidential dissatisfaction is wider than some may think. Talking about internal party politics. The hosts predict Biden could pardon his family members before leaving office, suggesting a messy exit could impact the Democratic Party negatively. Ultimately, the hosts agree that time is ticking for Biden and the Democratic Party, and critical decisions need to be made sooner rather than later. They highlight the difference between the Democratic and Republican conventions, suggesting these conventions and the superdelegates could be instrumental in driving the transition within the party as the presidential race heats up. Lastly, there's a distinct warning for the Democratic Party. Neglecting their own promises of equality and representation could backfire dramatically in the elections. The dissatisfaction with the existing administration, coupled with the potential backlash from bypassing potential candidates like Kamala Harris, could let Republicans gain the upper hand in the coming elections, delving deeper into the dynamics of American politics. The hosts shifted their focus from President Biden to ex-President Trump in the PBD podcast, featuring host Patrick Bet-David and seasoned political consultant Roger Stone. They questioned Trump's potential second presidential run, with Stone painting a picture of Trump as unswervingly determined and confident, to the extent of running even from a prison cell, if circumstances came to it. Stone also discussed the possibility of Trump making significant policy changes around immigration, law enforcement, intelligence agencies, among other areas. He also hinted at Trump's aspirations for a radical second term, signifying possible substantial changes in America's governance under a second Trump administration. One such area of reform could be the deportation of illegal immigrants, suggesting a cognizance of the potential backlash from certain factions, but a willingness to face it nonetheless. One of the more contentious topics that came up was the potential manipulation of election outcomes through the controversial mail-in ballots used during the pandemic. Considering the lack of significant reform in the state election laws post the controversial 2020 elections, Stone predicted that the integrity of the next election might be in question again. Touching upon the wider Democratic constituents, they also discussed the Democratic Party's potential to go down with ship, continuing to support Biden despite diminished public approval and adverse poll numbers. Stone deemed this scenario highly unlikely based on the awareness within the party about the substantial possibility of a loss should Biden get renominated. He cited the rising societal issues of crime, the ongoing fentanyl crisis, broken cities, and states due to the influx of illegal immigrants and confusing Middle Eastern policies as contributing factors. The podcast moved forward from politics to include some tabloid scandal, talk about hip-hop mogul Diddy and singer Cassie's settlement of the abuse lawsuit filed by Ventura. The hosts shared their views on the lawsuit, its settlement, and the allegations, along with their implications. Overall, the nature of American politics, both at the party and individual level, along with sensational personal abuse allegations involving major entertainment figures, were the subjects of focus in this part of the podcast. In this part of the transcript, the PBD podcast steered into controversial areas involving allegations of abuse and domestic violence involving a well-known music mogul Diddy and singer Cassie. The hosts engaged in a spirited debate around Cassie's motivation for her settlement. While they agreed that any form of abuse was categorically unacceptable, they pondered over the dynamics of the abusive relationship and why Cassie didn't leave. The speculation about her potential Stockholm syndrome was forwarded, as was a question about her decision on settling the lawsuit instead of taking the issue to court. The conversation then shifted towards the recent report of 26 of remote workers in the U.S. engaging in intimate activities during work hours. The hosts jestingly explored this revelation, linking it to the possible motivation behind people preferring to work from home. They also covered the fact that remote workers were using creative emoji codes to keep their romantic escapades hidden while supposedly engaged in work activities. The hosts explored the implications of this trend for both the employees' personal lives and their professional efficiency. Moving forward, the podcast took a sobering turn discussing online dangers, focusing on a recent scam targeting teenage boys on Snapchat. The hosts cogently highlighted the issue of financial extortion and the notable increase in cases seen by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They emphasized the need for stronger parental supervision and education for teens about online predators, pointing out that parenting in the digital age has taken on a new dimension. They stressed the importance of managing this landscape effectively and responsibly. The podcast then delves into the developing societal norms and features, forthright exchange of views on individual responsibility for personal decisions, the power dynamics of relationships, the transitioning work culture due to remote working, and the alarming growth of online exploitation in the digital era. The discussion proceeded to the lively matter of Elon Musk boycotting companies after endorsing a post deemed anti-Semitic. This has caused backlash from major organizations, including Apple and IBM. In defense of Musk, the host suggested bias against him due to his free speech stance, arguing that his post may not have been the best, but society's reaction was reflecting more of an issue with him rather than the content of the post itself. The debate then moved on to the regulation of social media content, with Roger Stone discussing his lifetime bans from platforms like Facebook and YouTube and identifying this an issue of curtailing free speech. Musk was commended by the hosts for taking a courageous stance against the censorship imposed by these platforms. Early conversation also cast light on the alarming rise in anti-Semitism on platforms like TikTok, as voiced by celebrities like Sacha Baron Cohen. They delved into the apparent scapegoating of Jews throughout history and discussed the need for Jews to have a safe space, hence the establishment of modern-day Israel. Additionally, the hosts heatedly lambasted Media Matters for their alleged biased representation of the situation surrounding Elon Musk and Twitter. They criticized their perceived manipulation of the situation to paint Musk, drawing a parallel with TikTok's activities. The hosts expressed concern about how China is allowed to continue with their questionable activities. Thus, the hosts shift gears. They commemorate the anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, discussing with Roger Stone, who authored the New York Times bestseller, The Man Who Killed Kennedy. The case against LBJ, who believes that Lyndon Johnson was behind the fatal event. This was supported by Jim Jenkins, a man who worked on JFK's postmortem, who also pointed to Johnson as a suspect. The host wrapped up on the note that the quest for the whole truth in this case is yet incomplete. The podcast features a detailed discussion about the assassination of JFK. Roger Stone attributes the assassination to Lyndon Johnson, who he claims was the linchpin connecting different organizations like the CIA, FBI, Secret Service, Big Texas Oil, and international banks. According to Stone, Johnson was under federal investigation for the Bobby Baker scandal and Billy Sol Estes scandal. JFK intended to drop him from the ticket, and Johnson, knowing that he could go to prison, had motive and means for JFK's assassination. And the host cite Jim Jenkins, who worked on JFK's postmortem, as another voice supporting the theory of Johnson's involvement. Furthering this theory, Stone explains that Lyndon Johnson was the nexus to all these institutions and individuals involved in JFK's assassination. According to him, each organization carried its own motive. The CIA was angered due to the Bay of Pigs failure and JFK's secret deal to remove us missiles from Turkey and Italy. Big Oil was frustrated over JFK's repeal of the oil depletion allowance. Organized crime felt double-crossed by JFK, who they had financed and supported for his 1960 election. The banks were perturbed because JFK was demanding a silverback dollar. Stone quotes Nixon, who once told him that both he and Johnson wanted to be president, but Nixon was not willing to kill for it. In Stone's perspective, this indicated Nixon's acknowledgement of Johnson's role in JFK's book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy. The case against LBJ elaborates further on this analysis. To illustrate his point, Stone talks about how just 3.5 days after JFK's assassination, Lyndon Johnson greenlit the Vietnam War. JFK had fired the then head of the CIA, Allen Dulles, who ended up on the War Commission after Johnson took over as president. Adding to the discussion, the hosts bring up JFK's relationship with Dr. Max Jacobson, often referred to as Dr. Feelgood. JFK was on an early version of methamphetamine and steroids prescribed by Dr. Jacobson. Stone posits that this could have been used by intelligence agencies as a justification for JFK's assassination, fearing he would give too much away to Nikita Khrushchev due to his drug-influenced state of mind. The podcast goes on to delve into the reluctance of both Trump and Biden to release all JFK assassination records. Stone believes that Trump was convinced by the then head of CIA, Mike Pompeo, that releasing it all would expose methods and sources of intelligence. He suggests that the 20 of records held back by Trump would prove definitively that Oswald was not the shooter and that Kennedy was shot from the front and back, indicating multiple shooters. The hosts continued to discuss the likelihood that CIA and FBI were involved in the assassination of Kennedy and analyze various players and elements that contributed to this tragic event, continuing to uncover multiple layers in their quest for truth. In this particular section of the podcast, the hosts and guest Roger Stone engage in an animated conversation about the dynamics between Vice President George Bush and Secretary of State Alexander Haig during the Reagan administration. Stone asserts that the two were embroiled in a struggle for control of foreign policy. According to him, Bush made a power move to establish his dominance in this area. As the discussion progresses, Patrick Bet-David brings attention to Stone's New York Times bestseller, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. The host encouraged their audience to purchase the paperback version of the book, as it contains 3 additional chapters that add depth to the narrative. They even held a survey with the winner, aptly named Mississippi Japan, receiving a signed copy of Stone's book. The hosts go on to highlight Stone's extensive experience in the political arena, acknowledging the polarizing nature of his career. He's a figure who's equally loved, hated, criticized, and feared. However, Stone's wealth of experience is irrefutable, having been involved in politics for over 50 years. They underscore that Stone was one of the very first, if not the first, to predict that Donald Trump would eventually become president after having a conversation with him. For the audience wanting to directly contact Stone, the hosts make available his contact details. This offers listeners a chance to ask him questions, gain insights into his strategic political mind, and even arrange a phone call or FaceTime with him. Before wrapping up the segment, the hosts announce they'll be hosting a podcast on Thanksgiving morning to wish their listeners a happy Thanksgiving before signing off from what they deem a fantastic conversation with political insider Roger Stone. This implies that Patrick Bet-David, Roger Stone, and the rest of the team are eager to continue providing content even on major holidays, emphasizing their dedication to their podcast and audience. Check out the full podcast by clicking the link in the description below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for listening to this podcast summary episode of the Pod Slice.